We are 5 days away from fundamentally transforming the United States of America.
A hateful video that sparked violence in various parts of the world.
Hope is making a comeback. For the first time in my adult lifetime, I'm proud of my country.
If you like your doctor, you will be able to keep your doctor, period. If you like your health care plan, you'll be able to keep your health care plan, period.
I'm from a small town in Tennessee, a long way from the suits in D.C., but close enough now to see this mess.
What difference at this point does it make?
Where I stand, the mound's getting steeper. They grab a shovel, dig a hole a little deeper, just to bury my kids right up to their neck.
I've got a pen, and I've got a phone.
I might not be a political man, but when your back's against the wall, you gotta rise up and take a stand. My love is true for the red, white, and blue, and that's why I fight for each and every one of our rights. And I know they stole a little bit of this country's soul, but I'm here to tell you all today we'll take it back again.
If you've been successful, you didn't get there on your own. If you've got a business, you didn't build that. Somebody else made that happen.
We will take it back again. In this hour, we'd like to welcome to the Scott Adams Show, Peg Luksik. Peg Luksik comes to us from foundedontruth.com. She is an expert on Common Core, and we welcome her to the show, and we'll get into that interview and more in just a moment.
In a world gone mad, there is an intergalactic struggle between right and wrong, good and evil. We find the truth on The Scott Adams Show. Corrupt government, evildoers, and media bias are exposed. Hold on to your seats. Buckle up for safety. You are now entering another dimension with The Scott Adams Show.
I'd like to welcome to the Scott Adams Show Dr. Peg Luksik. Peg comes to us from foundedontruth.com. She is not only the founder, she is the chairperson. The mission statement for foundedontruth.com is to rebuild our culture based on the truths that founded America. And there are 5 listed on foundedontruth.com, and they are: there is a creator. Each of us is one of his creations. We are created to be free. The government was established to protect that freedom, and the government is accountable to us and to our Creator. Welcome to the show, Dr. Luksik.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Welcome to the show, Dr. Luksik, and I'm going to tell our listeners a little bit more about Dr. Luksik. Dr. Peg Luksik, as Scott just mentioned, is the chairman of foundedontruth.com. She is an educator with over 35 years teaching experience. She was an advisor to President Reagan's Commission on the Family and created the National Parents Commission to fight for parental rights in education. Dr. Luksik has the distinction of having run for governorship in Pennsylvania 3 times in 1990, 1994, and 1998. And in one of her elections in the primary, she garnered so many votes that they established another party, the Constitution Party. So that's a great distinction. And she also ran in the Senate race in 2010 against Pat Toomey. She also hosted her own television show called The Learning Curve on the National Empowerment Television Network, which was created by the Free Congress Foundation. Dr. Luksik has spoken and written extensively about the Common Core education standards, and she is here today to discuss Common Core. Welcome, Dr. Luksik.
Thank you so much.
Well, you seem qualified, so we're glad you're on the show.
We vetted your resume.
That's okay.
So, well, of course, we're delighted to have you here. And Common Core is a topic that we are endeavoring to illuminate our listeners about because I think there's a lot of confusion about it. And I thought that a great way to start the discussion would be to take one of the articles that you had written. And again, as we've said before, you have spoken and written extensively about the topic. And when people go to your site, foundedontruth.com, they will see YouTube presentations from your speaking engagements. They will also see some of the articles that you've written. But the one that I thought was interesting is called the 4 Freedoms of Common Core. And the reason why I think this would be a good one to start with is because it breaks it down in a way that's kind of simple. It starts with the first freedom being the freedom from accountability. And I thought that what we could do is go through those 4 freedoms, and you could talk a little bit more about what they mean in the broader context. So just starting with the freedom from accountability, what do you mean by that?
when the state set the Common Core, and in Pennsylvania, it's not called Common Core, it's called Pennsylvania Core. Arizona now has another name. Florida has another name. So what many states have done is changed the name, but not the content. So it's important for folks to remember that no matter what it's called in your state, we're still looking at the same animal. In this system, the State Department of Education sets the standards, and the children then are measured against the standards through an assessment mechanism that the state either singly, like the state developed its own, or in a consortium of states developed, which is given once a year. Then the state comes together and decides what's the passing level for that test. So we have the state setting the standard, delivering the curriculum, writing the measuring instrument, scoring its own measuring instrument, and then the state reports on its own results. If you were a bank, would you give a business a loan based on that kind of information? If the business came to you and said, we set our own standards for success and we've measured ourselves and we're telling you we're doing a good job.
In other words, where's the outside party? Where's the outside inspector?
It sounds like Hillary Clinton and the email server.
It really, it's about as ugly as you can get. And what has now developed is that we now, in looking at how the states set the scoring mechanism, they set the passing score. It's called a cut score, like you make the cut.
Yeah.
After they have the raw data. So they give the children the test, and the test is a secret, and then they get all of the actual scores of the children. They got 6 out of 10 correct or 7 out of 10 correct. And then they decide, well, this is where we're going to put the level for passing or proficiency. Well, if we put it here, this many children will pass. If we put it there, that many children will pass. You never set the passing level after you have the data, because you can manipulate the scores. So, for example, in the state of New York, before any child took any test, when they began their Common Core testing, the commissioner said, well, we know we've had like 60% pass rates, but we're sure it's going to be 37%. And as if by magic, the passing rate was 37%. And superintendents went, wait a minute, you predicted that. How did you know? Well, because they set the passing score after they had the raw data. So the score doesn't mean anything. Parents aren't told Johnny got 60% correct or 35% correct. Parents are only told Johnny passed. But you have no idea what the word passing means. And every year it moves.
Because it's based on a bar that doesn't have any standard of its own.
Exactly. Because the same state that is implementing this system sets it to make a result be where it wants. So when I first started looking into this, I looked, for example, at the state of Maryland's website, their Department of Education website, and it actually said that they set the passing standard at a level that every child would meet it.
So in other words, you can't fail.
Wow, Mom.
And they're actually doing that a lot in different departments of education in different cities, where you have kids struggling in school, and so therefore the teachers grade easier. They give better grades out, and then there are some places where they're stricter, and it's really hard to get a good grade, and so you see that imbalance everywhere you go. But now it's done uniformly.
And also
now
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Now it's done by the Departments of Education,
right.
But you don't know where that level is. And what we're now seeing is the Departments of Education are inflating the passing level to make more children fail because, one, there's lots of extra money for companies like Pearson for remediation, and two, it bolsters the argument that the Common Core standards are, quote, more rigorous. See, they're not doing as well because the standards are so much higher that the children aren't doing as well. We don't really know how the children are doing because we don't ever get to see the raw numbers. We only get to see what the state tells us how many kids passed. but they don't ever tell us what the word passing means.
Right,
and it moves.
To your point, where there's anytime you have a group that's benefiting, you can depend on their support. And so
absolutely.
you have this situation where it just looks to me like it's a lobbyist breeding ground for textbooks, for all kinds of standards, for what you just alluded to. It seems to me like, there's a lot of politics being played here as well.
Oh, yes, there certainly are. And the sad thing is that children's promotion, can you move forward to the next grade or not? Do you have to be remediated or not? Teacher evaluation. All of these really important issues are tied to a score that is at its base meaningless. And yet, since the state is the one in control at every level and can keep all of the internal information a secret, there's no way to hold the State Department of Education accountable, which is one of the 4 main problems with Common Core. There's no accountability for the state departments of education who are force-feeding this and then controlling how the results are reported.
And then the use of those results, as you pointed out, can be used in many different ways. On one hand, you can be, as you said, moving the bar so that the outcomes look better or they look worse, because in some instances, you want the students to be performing better on the adequate yearly progress reports and all the other standards, because that helps with funding. But on the other hand, it may help with funding for the remediation programs that you mentioned for the scores to be worse. So
exactly.
So it depends on what your objective is.
This is deadly.
Well, if you have nothing, if it's not reliable or accountable, it's not good. So let's take a look at the next one, freedom from privacy. Now, here you speak about the Pennsylvania Information Management System, the acronym PIMS. And as we said off air, I have a little bit of experience with this because I worked as a development director for a school, and I'm very aware that this system is used to report on students, on their all types of information about them, demographic information, academic performance information, and it is a very tedious process to go through that because I had to do that as part of my responsibility. But you brought up some interesting points. Was this system implemented in conjunction with the Common Core?
It actually was implemented before Common Core. Common Core requires the states to collect and report more information, but Pennsylvania, through federal mandates, just as every other state, was required to create a system. It's called a P through 20 system, actually. P being preschool, K through 12 is what you think. 13, 14, 15, and 16 is college, and 17, 18, 19, 20 is the workforce. Ultimately, the education data gets linked at an individual level per child with what you do when you enter the workforce. And the final database is actually found in the United States Department of Labor. It's called the Workforce Data Quality Initiative, for those of your listeners who want to Google it. And it will tell you, when you look at that they're linking at an individual level all of the information on children from preschool into the workforce. What job do you have? How much money do you make? Have you ever been on unemployment? Have you ever needed extra benefits? So it's basically creating a lifelong dossier for our children. And Common Core continued and then grew that process. In order to get the federal money, the states had to say that they were incorporating all of the elements of the P through 20 data system, and that they were merging education data with data from the Department of Health, Children and Youth, or Child Protective Services, depending on what state you're in, mental health data, financial records. In Tennessee, they actually call it the 360-degree view of the child.
Wow.
And, they're doing the same thing with Obamacare as well. In order to get the subsidy, if you wanted one, or in order to get into the system, you have to lay out your entire, IRS tax statements. And it just seems to be that government is really intruding into our lives in just about every aspect of our lives. And it's not a place where we want to be if we want to be the land of the free.
Exactly. You know, people ask me all the time, well, what is the government doing with the data? Delaware is the state that probably is the best example because they're doing it. By the time the child is in 8th grade, the child has to have what's called a student success plan. It's a requirement for graduation. The school, remember that's the government entity, presents the child using all of the data that has been collected on that child from the daycare centers, preschool, all of the early school years. They give them what's called a career matchmaker chart. It's up to 10 careers that have been selected for that child by the government based on all the data and all of the information that's been collected. The child has to pick a career from among the list. They can't step outside the list. They have to stay inside the list. And then their entire high school is like circled around or geared toward having them achieve the skills necessary to reach that career. Parents can look at their student success plan. They cannot change it.
And we can't even get Obama's transcripts from his college records. No. That's odd.
And can you imagine being a parent of a 13-year-old and you see a list, this is the list your child has been given of a career, and you say, well, wait, he doesn't want to be any of the things on this list. He wants to be something entirely different. You have no control over your child's career plan. It has been selected by the school based on all of the tracking, and the Delaware documents actually say the word tracking, and they say, and it's in all of the documents, that parents, you sign that you saw it, but you are not allowed to change it.
Wow.
So the parents have totally lost control of the career plan of their child. Now, I've been in Delaware. There was supposed to be a debate with the secretary, but he was coming until he found out that I was coming, and so then he declined to attend. But we had it anyway. We still had the forum, and people in the room parents were telling me that they were pulling their children out of the school because they were told that they weren't allowed to change the career that had been selected for their child.
And the parents lose the control to who?
To the school.
To the school, to the government.
To the government, because that's a government agency.
And this is the same department that's controlled by the teachers' unions. We know that in 2014, these teachers' unions rolled out about $60 million, and about 95% of that went to one single party, the Democrat Party. And so there's a lot of politics in here. And the parents are losing control to a political persuasion, and that's not a good idea.
They definitely are. Now, to be fair, rank-and-file teachers are opposing this all over the country. We have teachers who have stood up and refused to administer the tests and been fired because of it. We have teachers who are openly sharing, even at the cost of their jobs and satisfactory ratings, information about what's happening in classrooms. When I speak, and I travel the country, teachers are told they're not allowed to come. In some cases, administrators sit in the room and write down the names of any teachers who show up because they'll write the word insubordinate in their files. So while the national teachers unions are supportive of this, both because of their political agenda and also because they've taken millions of dollars from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to promote this, rank-and-file teachers are not signing on. Rank-and-file teachers are, in many cases, doing what they can to oppose it. I was in Philadelphia in a room I didn't know. I was in a room full of teachers until it was done, and these women came up. They literally had tears, saying, "This is hurting children. We're doing everything we can to protect them, but we're going to lose our jobs by opposing it." And then there'll be nobody to protect the children, or we're being told comply or get out, and we're getting out because we will not hurt children. So the rank-and-file teachers in many places across the country are standing up in opposition to this, often at the cost of their own careers.
And this is just the beginning. Common Core is going to, if it has its way, it'll grow and affect our lives even in a more dominating fashion than that. Where if the teachers or anyone disagrees, you're fired. That's just really unfortunate. And you mentioned that you do speak all around the country, and we just want to let our listeners know that we're speaking with Dr. Peg Luksik, and that's spelled Luksik, but it sounds like Luksik. And you're the founder and chairman of FoundedOnTruth.com. We're going to continue our discussion with Dr. Peg Luksik in just a moment.
Diabetes, high blood pressure, anxiety meds, everyone's on them. If you're a 50-year-old male, maybe a bit porky, and you may even have type 2 diabetes, $1 million of term insurance may only cost you about $200 a month. Call Term Provider. Speak with Big Lou at 800-434-4979. Big Lou will find a term life policy for you even if you have type 2 diabetes, are overweight, or have high blood pressure. Term Providers help thousands of people like you who think they can't afford term life insurance. To buy $1 million of affordable term life for you, all you need to do is call Big Lou at 800-434-4979. Lou will make sure the scales are tipped in your favor. Call 800-434-4979. Big Lou will answer your call and work to fit you into a term life policy that you can afford. Remember, Big Lou's like you. He's on meds too. Call 800-434-4979. 800-434-4979.
Hi, I'm Joan London, and if you're worried about your parent or a loved one living alone like I was, and you want reliable senior care information, then call A Place for Mom, the nation's largest senior living referral service. With one phone call, you'll get free information on assisted living, Alzheimer's care, nursing homes, even important financial information. It's a free service, so call now.
1-800-479-7261. That's 1-800-479-7261.
Are you tired of commuting to a job that makes someone else rich, working harder than ever, but getting nowhere? Do you hate spending hundreds of dollars every week on daycare, having someone else raise your children? With our opportunities, you can start earning money as soon as next week. You get to be the boss, work from home, and live a happier life. At Be the Boss Network, you'll find hundreds of work-from-home opportunities that you can literally start today and be earning money as soon as next week. Go to freedom42.com and start earning money as soon as next week. You get to be the boss. Get out of the rat race. Work from home. Go to freedom42.com right now and change your life today. That's freedom42.com. Go to freedom42.com and start earning money as soon as next week. You be the boss. Go to freedom42.com.
Curious about owning physical gold? Gulf Coast Gold and Silver is offering a free guide in investing in precious metals. Silver and gold have historically been safe havens and excellent hedges in any serious investor's portfolio. The time is now. Get your free guide to investing in precious metals. Call 800-460-4814. Again, 800-460-4814. Our gold advisors are standing by.
Hold on to your seats. Buckle up for safety. You are now entering another dimension with The Scott Adams Show.
And we're back. My name is Scott Adams. I'm joined by Leonora Cravota, and this is The Scott Adams Show. Well, we're going to continue our discussion with Dr. Peg Luksik. Peg Luksik is the founder and chairman and chairperson of the FoundedOnTruth.com website, and that is an excellent website where you can find great information about Common Core, which is the topic that we have you on the show today for. And welcome back to the Scott Adams Show, Peg.
Oh, thank you so much.
Well, I want to go to the next item on your list of freedoms for Common Core's freedoms, and that freedom is freedom from excellence. And based on what we were just discussing, the fact that teachers and that they're making decisions on behalf of the students what their future career paths are, I think that definitely interferes with the possibility for excellence.
Absolutely. You know, when you hear the marketing points for Common Core, what they say is these are high, rigorous standards that every child will have to meet. Let's say we have 10 people walking in a line and they all have to walk at the same speed. Won't they move at the speed of the person who walks the slowest? Because that person can't move more quickly.
That's an excellent point.
But the quicker person can slow down. In fact, the Common Core standards in math have been analyzed and found to be 2 years behind what traditional education had and what they're doing in other countries. In the Common Core standards, and for example here in Pennsylvania, you don't that the high school math graduation requirement is Algebra 1, and you don't have to pass it until the 11th grade. In a document called What Does It Mean to Be College and Work Ready, written by one of the federal think tanks, they actually talk about what we mean being ready to go to a community college. That means Algebra 1 by the end of your sophomore year in high school, because they say since 95% of the careers out there don't need higher math, it's a waste to teach it. If you don't need it for your career specifically, it's a waste to teach it to you. And so Common Core slows it down. In the language standards, literature has been, by the 12th grade, 30% is fiction, 70% is nonfiction, described as government documents, how-to manuals. In one case, I saw a menu. It's a deliberate. It's not education to help a child discover and then reach their potential. It's education to create a workforce, each member of which has the skills that that person needs to do the job that has been selected for them, and no more than that. Because education beyond what you need to do the job that has been chosen for you in this system is considered a waste of time and effort.
That's incredible. And you know what I find interesting about the idea, the emphasis on, I think they were calling it text-based learning, as you're reading literature to do some type of exercise as a result of reading the literature instead of being able to appreciate the great writers. That utilitarian view of education, as opposed to education as a way to inform you and to enrich you, it's being used, the term 1984 sounds dated now, but the concept of a pre-planned society.
Yes,
it's frightening.
It's about creating a workforce. So we talked about Delaware. I've been in other states where we hear all about how this is so wonderful that children are choosing careers by the 8th grade. Those are 13-year-old children. How can you decide to be a physicist at 13 if you've never taken physics, and 13-year-olds haven't, or a chemist, or a journalist, or a professional musician? Because 13-year-olds don't have any of those skills. It's a marketing label, and whoever developed the words college and career ready, however much they paid them, they deserve it. Because people just embrace that. Doesn't that sound wonderful? What does it mean to have one set of standards that will make you college and career ready? Think about all of the careers out there. So how can one set of standards simultaneously prepare people to be engineers, physicians, concert pianists, astronauts, and linguists? Is anybody seriously saying that set of standards is going to prepare children for all of those things? Of course not. Each of those careers has a very specific set of skills and knowledge that is required to move you forward in that career. The words college and career ready have in real life as much meaning as the little jingle at the end of We Are Farmers. The one that says bump, ba-dum, bump, 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 bump. College and career ready means about as much as those syllables. There is no such animal.
So I dug up Devil's Advocate on the internet for you, so you can slam it out of the park if you will. And there's a myth, and it says this is a website that is on the internet that actually supports Common Core. So it says myth: adopting common standards means bringing all states' standards down to the lowest common denominator. This means that states with high standards are actually taking a step backwards by adopting the Common Core. And then it says fact: the standards are designed to build upon the most advanced current thinking about preparing all students for success in college, career, and life. This will result in moving even the best state standards to the next level. In fact, since this work began, there has been an explicit agreement that no state would lower its standards. The standards were informed by the best in the country, the highest international standards, and evidence and expertise about educational outcomes. We need college and career-ready standards because even in high-performing states, students are graduating and passing all the required tests but still need remediation in their post-secondary work. So how do you explain that?
It's just not a true statement. One of the states that had what was arguably considered the best standards in the country was the state of Massachusetts. I've been there multiple times. The opposition to the Common Core standards in Massachusetts is enormous and growing as people realize that they traded away standards that were higher for standards that were lower. The same thing happened in California. In fact, the idea that you can standardize education for all children has no support in the research whatsoever, because you can't set one standard for every child in every subject at every grade level and think that that's going to work or make any sense unless you make that standard so low that the lowest child can reach it. Like Maryland, we set the passing level where every kid was going to reach it. In fact, when you look at, for example, the National Assessment on Educational Progress, what we see is that the results there haven't changed in 20 years. We've had standards-based education in America since 1994 with Goals 2000 under President Clinton, and yet the NAEP results haven't really changed. We've spent billions of dollars, built stress levels for children and teachers, fundamentally changed the way that our system fit together so now everybody teaches to the test, and yet results haven't really gone up. And Common Core is proving to make that even worse. The sad thing about the Common Core standards was that when they wrote them, what they did was, it's called reverse engineering, where they started with, well, this is what we think it means to be college and career ready, and then they backed that all the way up into kindergarten. And so when the early childhood standards came out, early childhood experts, over 500 of them from across the country, actually signed a statement saying these standards conflict with what we know about early childhood education. They were right. And now we're hearing from psychologists and guidance counselors with the smallest of our children in incredible emotional stress and pain. One little girl in the state of New York, after one of these state assessments, actually carved the words "I'm stupid" into her own wrist.
Oh, my. Wow. Okay, that's horrible. Another myth and fact, before we leave the second or the third point, I think it was, for excellence. This one is, again, a myth and a fact. And, again, this is the pro-Common Core position. And since we were talking about algebra, for example, it says myth. The standards do not prepare or require students to learn algebra in 8th grade, as many states' current standards do. And then they say fact, right? And this is, again, a proponent of Common Core. They say the standards do accommodate and prepare students for Algebra 1 in 8th grade by including the prerequisites for this course in grades K through 7. Students who master the K through 7 material will be able to take Algebra 1 in 8th grade. At the same time, grade 8 standards also include rigorous algebra and will transition students effectively into a full Algebra 1 course. I actually am a lay person, and I see flaws in that fact. Well, what they're considering
exactly.
to be a fact. But go ahead and hit that one out of the park.
You know what? If you look at the people who actually wrote the Common Core standards, they have testified in front of education committees in a variety of states, and they have very clearly stated in more than one occasion, these standards do not prepare students for anything more than a community college. The documents are very clear, and when you look at even the statement that you read, well, maybe they might be ready, but 8th grade, they're all over the place. What we used to have, and what we had been developing, a path that taught Algebra 1 in 8th grade so that kids could get to calculus by college. Yet the proponents of the Common Core standards have openly said that calculus is not part of the Common Core sequence, that Common Core slows the math progression down, which is kind of, if you actually get rid of all of the garbage in the statement that you just read, that's what they said.
Well,
we slow it down.
Well, yeah, your point absolutely makes sense when you first said if you have 10 people in a row and you're going to go at the slowest you're going to go at the pace of the slowest person out of the 10 people or whatever the point was. But you're going to go to the common denominator. That's where you're going to be.
Yes.
And you have to, because you can't leave. If you start leaving part of the group behind, you're going to have a mess on your hands. So you have to go at that pace. And right there, that sort of nicely counters whatever fact they were trying to manipulate in that answer. Because you're never going to get to K through 7 to be up to standard if you're going at the slowest common denominator. So when you get to grade 8, obviously that's going to be a pipe dream.
Yes, and that's what's happening. The kids are not in one district. I believe it was in New York, and it's one of the largest districts in the state. All of a sudden, children who've been exposed to this for a couple of years, they're like, we were offering these higher math classes, but now we don't have anybody ready to take them. Well, of course you don't. You slowed everything down. So you've made it so the kids aren't ready to take it. And the saddest piece about that, when you think about math, because what you always hear is, yeah, but we don't really need that higher math. That's kind of a waste. Why do we have to teach it? The U.S. Department of Education actually does study education issues. And so in 1999, they published a study called Answers in the Toolbox, and it was looking at what leads to success in college. That study became part of a larger study by Auburn University that was eventually published in 2004. And what the accumulation of all that research found was that if children get to calculus in high school, they are 28 times. I didn't say 28%. I said 28 times. That's 2,800%. More likely to be a high achiever in college, regardless of their race, their socioeconomic status, the kind of high school they went to, or the major that they take. Because the skills of higher math translate. Problem solving, thinking in a straight line, taking something big and breaking it down into manageable steps, persevering through a situation that at first can appear a little bit difficult. All of those things translate. So the biggest thing that we could be doing for our children to ensure that they open doors through college and later life is to let each child get as close as they can get to calculus, hopefully getting there, because calculus is a door opener. Even if you never use it again, Common Core closes doors that we should be opening.
Yeah, it seems like it stifles free-form thinking. And it sounds to me like a liberal idea. And, when you actually get 10 pegs and you hold them all back to stay as a group and go at the slowest common denominator pace, it's sort of like redistribution of wealth. Oh, there's some people over here that are rich and there's some people over here that are poor. Let's take from the rich and give to the poor and level the playing field and keep everybody in a box. And that sounds like, a communist state to me. You also can look at the new Obama housing concept, where he wants to allow for affordable housing in affluent neighborhoods. Like, that's really going to work. And it basically stifles creativity, innovation, and progress. Because if you have a system like that, you're only going to work as though you're punching a clock and you have a quota-based system. You're never going to excel. And it's that kind of. That's not the kind of system that made America great.
No, it certainly isn't. But it's an interesting dynamic because on the one side, the opposition, for example, the state of Oklahoma, which is considered one of the most Republican states in the nation, is doing everything they can and actually voted out the Common Core state standards, and so they're pushing hard. On the other hand, in the state of Washington, it was the Democratic State Committee that unanimously came out and voted in opposition to the Common Core state standards. So it cuts very odd political lines, where we have people on the left, for example, Hillary Clinton and Jeb Bush are both for the Common Core state standards. So you have people on the left and the right who are embracing, and people on the left and the right who are opposing for a whole variety of reasons. A lot of the money that's coming to support this is coming from groups like the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, multinational corporations. And in one of the federal documents, it actually talks about the fact that American workers want too much money. An engineer who was educated in India will work for $7,500 whereas an American engineer wants $45,000. So some of the big multinational corporations are basically marrying government to basically control the workforce so that they can lower wages for everyone.
And you're bringing up an interesting point with your point number 4, freedom from local control. So here we're back at the same point. The government is controlling the educational standards and taking it out of the hands of the local educators. Because the way I'm reading this here, if every district must teach the one curriculum that is aligned to the one assessment that measures the one standard or face negative consequences for students, teachers, and schools, whatever happened to local control?
It disappeared. And in fact, the architects of this are well aware that that is the goal. It's interesting. I just earlier today saw an article that came by where one of the folks said, well, the debate is between local control and accountability. What a specious argument. Who cares more about the achievement of children than that child's own parents? When this country actually did have community schools, locally controlled schools, we had one of the highest literacy rates in the country. As a matter of fact, the National Center for Education Statistics, which is an arm of the federal government of the U.S. Department of Education that collects pretty much any number you could think of, has actually published literacy rates in America, and they went down and down and down until by 1979 the rate of illiterates among American high school graduates was slightly less than 1%. And then the U.S. Department of Education was created as a separate entity by Jimmy Carter in a deal with the teachers' unions, and the Department of Education has grown and grown and grown. And now the illiteracy rate among American high school graduates is between 15 and 20%, depending on what what study you look at. And the Renaissance Learning, which is a national kind of think tank that measures literacy rates, says that incoming college freshmen in this year, their literacy rate, their reading level is 7th grade.
Wow.
Can you imagine? That means they can't read Dickens or Chaucer or Shakespeare or Steinbeck or Hemingway or even Mark Twain.
Wow.
So, and the colleges have had to change their reading list for incoming freshmen because the reading level of the students is so low. So we have a federal government that currently is directing about 80% of the decision-making at the local school district level and attempting to get to 100, driving up spending, which they don't pay for, and the cost of education per student, and yet our kids every generation is doing worse than the generation before. This is, for years, every generation did better. But the 30-somethings, they were the first generation who did not read as well as their parents. And yet their parents paid way more for education per student because of federal control and federal mandates. It is specious to say that the federal government gives you more actual accountability. The best way to get accountability in the schools is to put the schools in the hands of the parents and taxpayers and teachers. The people who've actually met the child and therefore care about that child.
Right.
That's when you get accountability.
Right, and we're seeing the same thing with patient-doctor over with the federal Obamacare as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
We're going to take a quick break, but we're speaking with Dr. Peg Luksik. Dr. Peg Luksik is the founder and chairperson of FoundedOnTruth.com, and you can check out that website and get a lot of great information. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back after these messages.
Curious about owning physical gold? Gulf Coast Gold and Silver is offering a free guide in investing in precious metals. Silver and gold have historically been safe havens and excellent hedges in any serious investor's portfolio. The time is now. Get your free guide to investing in precious metals. Call 800-460-4814. Again, 800-460-4814. Our gold advisors are standing by.
Hi, I'm Joan London, and if you're worried about your parent or a loved one living alone like I was, and you want reliable senior care information, then call A Place for Mom, the nation's largest senior living referral service. With one phone call, you'll get free information on assisted living, Alzheimer's care, nursing homes, even important financial information. It's a free service, so call now.
1-800-479-7261. That's 1-800-479-7261.
We find the truth on The Scott Adams Show. Hold on to your seats. Buckle up for safety. You are now entering another dimension.
And we're back. My name is Scott Adams. I'm joined by Leonore Kravota, and this is the Scott Adams Show. Well, we're going to continue our discussion with Dr. Peg Luksik. Dr. Peg Luksik is the founder and chairperson over at foundedontruth.com. And welcome back to the Scott Adams Show, Peg.
Oh, thank you.
Well, we've kept you on for another segment because you're so informative with this subject, and we love having you on the program. But I had a few questions floating through my head as we were having this discussion. And I happen to have a family member who has a son who is autistic. And so we were talking about Common Core and autism. And there's a few fundamental problems when you bring these two things together. Would you agree?
Yes, and it's not just autism. It's special needs children sort of collectively. The first problem arises that if, the federal government is pushing hard to say all the children have to have the same thing. So I have been, and actually originally I was a special ed teacher, so, and I've been in rooms with current special ed teachers who say they can't do it. Why are they being held to a pace that they can't keep up? And then they're told, well, we'll scaffold it, where the teacher basically supplements all of the things that the child can't do until the state assessment happens. And so the first time that this little one is confronted with the actual situation, the problem, with a teacher who cannot scaffold, cannot fill in the blanks, that child is destroyed. And I've spoken to special ed teachers who say, I spent the whole year, and in 3 days, they were destroyed by a test that didn't take into account. And the federal government is saying that the states are going to lose their ability to create and administer alternative assessments because everybody has to be the same. The second issue is because the state is manipulating the test results to prove that the standards are more rigorous, so more children are failing, not that they necessarily are, but that's what the state is reporting, those children have to go into remediation. Somebody has to pay for that. Where does the money come from? I'm talking to folks across the country who say, well, where it's coming from is from the services that were considered special ed, because now special needs is not defined as autistic or cerebral palsy or ADHD. It's defined as whether or not you met the Common Core standards on the state assessment, which means that for the children who actually do have a special need, their slice of the pie just got a whole lot smaller because we've so diluted the number of people who were claiming our special needs that there's less for each one. For the children who actually do have a problem, this is devastating to them. They're not getting the support services that they need. They're not getting the help that they need. They're not getting aids. They're not, because the districts don't have the money to do both. These children will eventually just be left behind.
Well, as you were bringing up that point, I guess we need to just remind our listeners that what happens in the educational system is, particularly when you're talking about a public school, is that there is a certain amount paid by the state per child, and that there is often a differential between a student who is a special needs student versus a student who is not. So if you're, to your point, if the definition of what a special needs student has been diluted, then there is less money around for the students who truly need all those special aids and supports.
Exactly. On the other hand, there's more money administratively because if the child is labeled special needs, the district will get an added allotment from the state. But that addition helps administratively, but it doesn't make up for the services that are being denied to the children who actually need them. And sadly, I am hearing all over the country from parents with children with autism, with ADHD, with particularly some of the disorders that are not, like blindness is blindness, but ones that you can more easily ignore, that those children are not getting the services that they need in the way that they need them, and that parents are having an increasingly hard time fighting through the IEP process, fighting for the things that they need for their child, because the district does not have the resources to provide it because of all of the added costs of the remediation of Common Core.
Wow. Well, this is definitely one of these government overreaches once again. I mean, we're seeing it with Obamacare, where we're not paying less, we're paying more, and and the bureaucracies that grow under the programs like this are always the case. So what we've been sold is the brochure version of Common Core, but in reality, this is not going to go well. This is going to get bigger. This is going to get more expensive. There are going to be more problems. And just like net neutrality, just like Obamacare, and a whole host of other things, when the government gets involved, it's usually not a good thing. And this is not an exception. Common Core is not an exception. So I want to ask you one final question before we wrap up, and that is, how do we get here? Who invented this idea? Who is the brain trust of Common Core? I guarantee you, whoever it is, it's got to be someone coming from the far left.
You are exactly correct. This is not a new idea. You can trace it back a number of years, but we will. Let me take it back to. It's called the National Center for Education and the Economy. The gentleman in charge is a man named Mark Tucker, and in 1992 he wrote what is now a very famous or infamous letter to Hillary Clinton, whose husband had just been elected to president. And in that letter, which was actually read into the congressional record once it was made public because people were so horrified by it, Mr. Tucker outlined his vision, which was the Clintons' vision, for turning education into a workforce development system, destroying local control, creating what he called regional labor boards who would determine the labor market needs of that area and then tell the education system to make sure that they were filled, to educate children so they were filled. The letter was signed by a number of folks. Mark Tucker, a man named Michael Cohen. Mark Tucker has never taught. Michael Cohen was one of the signers and actually the executive director of Mr. Tucker's organization. He's never taught. He is now the chairman of Achieve Incorporated, which was the group that collected the money from the Gates Foundation and actually paid some of the writers of the Common Core State Standards. James B. Hunt, who was a former governor from the Carolinas, is now the chairman of the Hunt Institute, which receives millions of dollars from the Gates Foundation to promote and do all the marketing for the Common Core State Standards. So we see the same folks, they just moved forward 20 years. It was the original idea of the Clinton administration. Originally, when they first rolled it out, it was called outcome-based education. It was opposed, and school to work, it was opposed vigorously across the country. I know. I was one of the leading national opponents. And we basically beat them so that they could not implement the vision. But the same people, fast forward now to the 2010, they're still there, and it's the same vision. Remaking American society so that you, the individual, don't get to determine your future. The government will determine it for you.
You had the intellectual argument one, but they have the money, and that's how they're pushing forward.
They are. However, I will say opposition across the country, once again, is large and growing. I was in a meeting with a senator, and the mother said to the senator, "Let me explain this to you, Senator. There are two kinds of people when it comes to Common Core. Those who don't know anything about it and those who are appalled. The first group is shrinking, and the second group is growing."
Amen to that.
That's a great sign. At least we can say something positive is afoot.
Yeah.
Exactly.
The biggest problem with our country today is all the hippies, all the radical lefties from the 60s are now running things. That's the problem. The baby all grown up.
Though, because mothers never give up.
Pardon?
Mothers never give up. So when you attack children, what you just did was awaken their moms.
Right.
And grandmoms. And mothers, I often get asked about this, and the question is, there are many women leading this charge across the country. And I always say, it's funny, we talk about how fathers will die for their children, and God bless the gentleman. That's true. Mothers will kill.
Yeah.
They say
and
that.
So the government attacked the children at their peril, because the moms are never going to go away.
That is so true. I never thought of that.
And you are definitely a powerful mom. You have 6 children, correct?
I do, yes, and now I'm a grandmom.
Wonderful.
I have heard that phrase, hell hath no fury like a woman's scorn.
Well, they also
I've heard that one.
Well, they also say that if a child is under a car, a mother will have the strength of Hercules to lift the car up to get her child out. I've heard those types of statements made before.
Great points. But you're right. The mother is the protector, really, in a lot of ways. Well, we're speaking with Dr. Peg Luksik. Dr. Peg Luksik is the founder and chairperson over at foundedontruth.com. That's foundedontruth.com, and you can look up Luksik, spell it like Luksik. So, again, I want to thank you for hanging out with us for the hour, Peg. And
you're quite welcome.
It's been a learning experience, and we want to thank you for joining the Scott Adams Show.
Thank you. Have a lovely day.
All right. Well, we'll see you next time on the radio. All right. Bye-bye now. Well, that was Peg Luksik from foundedontruth.com. It was great to have her come on to the Scott Adams Show and talk about Common Core. And you're listening to the Scott Adams Show, and we'll return after these messages.